there. Welcome to the new Overlords Podcast, where we talk about video game news, what's interesting this week, and really what we've been playing. I'm Max, and with me is the icing on this cupcake of a podcast, my co-host Sema. Hello there,
I'm
Sema.
icing. I love it. Hey, Max, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm doing super good because we also have today a friend of the show we've pulled in to talk about some of the fun stuff we're talking about today, who's an expert in some of these things. BC. Hello, BC. How are you?
Hey, Max. Hey, Sema. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on again. I know we've had you on in the past on SWOTOR topics, but we're going to be talking about some other stuff today, including Diablo, which is going to be really fun. Well, I know we were talking about some things in the pre-show. I know you have also watched it. My latest hot thing to watch is One Piece. So did you watch the entire season, BC, of One Piece?
Yeah, I binge watched it. Really enjoyed it. Had never seen the anime before, but watched this Netflix version. Can't wait for season 2.
Yeah, so my son, who lives in California, he's in for the week, and he said that he and his girlfriend binge watched it all too, and said, "Let's do it. I'll show you the first episode." So we watched the first episode last night, and yeah, it was super fun. They did, and I've never seen the anime either. I've been aware of it, and I know the deal behind it, and I've looked into it. But characters are really good, story's really good, really really fun setting, and I'm in. I'll watch the rest of it. So that is cool. Let's see what else has been going on in non-movie, TV, Netflix news.
Good news, everyone.
Here we are in almost to the end of October. We've got about 6 days before the end of October, and we're still waiting for Ark Survival Ascended. And as of today, so this is the 25th, this is Thursday when this is getting broadcast, but the trailer for Ark Survival Ascended did finally show up. So they've been hinting and promising and not showing anything. No trailers, no pre-gameplay, none of that. Ark Survival Ascended is the remaster of the base game. They're doing a remaster, and maybe in the next year and a half, they'll have Ark 2, which will be a slightly different game. So they want this solid remaster, Unreal 5 version of the game out there for the long term, because the survival version of Ark Survival may be this remastered version for perpetuity. And then Ark 2 may be a slightly different kind of game. So the Xbox Partner Preview stream happened today. Ark Survival Ascended did show up in that stream. So I watched the stream live. It's basically a half hour of Xbox hosting trailer after trailer after trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody talks. There's no people. They just chained together a bunch of trailers with like a splash screen in between sets of them, and
Was
it
there
lasted
a
a
chat
half
room?
hour. Yeah, it was on Twitch. So, well, I watched it on YouTube. I think I watched it on YouTube Live. So I didn't really notice the chat room, but so they could have turned it off, but maybe they didn't. But so they showed a couple new things. They showed a couple existing things. They showed like the Solid Snake Eater new game coming out, and looked fun and interesting. But they showed Ark Survival Ascended. It should be hitting Steam any moment. Here we are. It's 8:44 p.m. Central. Let me hit refresh. It is not yet on Steam. It's supposed to be basically any minute now on Steam. It's supposed to show up. Consoles, unfortunately, will not be getting it until November sometime. And Studio Wildcard says details will be forthcoming on why that's the case and why they're very sorry about it. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to drag Sema into there. Corley is going to come along, maybe Lucy, and whoever else wants to join us. See that part right there with that house, Sema? Let me go back to it there. That's what we're going to build. We're going to build a little ranch, and we're going to have dinos.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go out into the world and you can tame baby dinos and then have them grow up, or you can have parent dinos that lay eggs and stuff.
Dino husbandry.
There's a lot of that, and it gets really complicated if you want. That's what we're going to do. Ark Survival Ascended coming soon. to New Overlords community.
And our poop is just going to look so much better.
Unreal 5 human poop. So that's if people didn't hear about that in our survival games episode. That is one of the mechanics of Ark is you use dino poop and your own poop in like boxes to make fertilizer, which you use to grow plants and stuff. But it's like you're just pooping all over the place. So yeah.
With no warning.
There kind of is a warning, I think, in one of those icons in the lower right. So we'll see.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anyway, also relevant to my interests, I don't know if you play this at all, BC, but Star Citizen just finished up a couple days ago. What they have their annual conference called CitizenCon. So they do a live event, conference center live event with keynotes and stage presentations and gameplay arena areas and things like that. They showed off what's coming next, and they showed off a version of a trailer for what they call Squadron 42. Squadron 42 is their single-player game, and then everything else you might think of in terms of Star Citizen, or if you look at things on Twitch or on YouTube, that's all what's called the Persistent Universe, which is the MMO version of the game.
I see this game is really popular with the ladies.
Correct. It is not, apparently. It's just a simulation space game. It is kind of nerdy. I saw one woman.
I saw two of them on stage, so they might be like employees.
Yeah, maybe.
Or like press.
It is kind of one of those kinds of games, I think.
I know you do not mean to imply that there are no nerdy women.
No. I don't know. But it's like Eve. It's like Eve is like 95% male audience for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's another of those kinds of games. There is a relatively strong PvP element as well. It's also not released, so you really got to be into digging into early access and
thing that you're going to say right now to try and guess why or why not isn't going to be good.
Yeah, okay. But I'm interested in where it's headed. Everybody who was a fan who watched CitizenCon got super excited about everything they saw. I think they got a little bit too excited, and even the content creators that are usually quite critical and salty and like yelling at that Roberts Space Industries to get their acting gear were like gushing over what they saw. It's still previews. It's still nothing's released, and they didn't promise a release date even for any of it. Even Squadron 42. Squadron 42 looks really good, but
and their merch looks awesome too. I don't understand why every game doesn't just dive in to merch.
Yeah, especially I'm sure a lot of games are probably thinking hard about how they could try to implement the model that the Star Citizen team has implemented, which is 10, 11, 12 years, and they've spent $600 million, and they don't have a date. They don't have they have this big roadmap of they keep like adding on stuff, and it's going to be years still before this stuff comes out. And their fan base keeps giving them money. So it's a masterclass. And really, it is beautiful. And the tech that they're building is amazing. And the reason they can do it is because they have unlimited budget and unlimited time.
So Corley just pointed out
game studio has.
In the chat room that other companies have had merch and it didn't work for them. I guess what I mean is merch and make it work instead of like a few caps and a few mugs.
Yeah. I don't like logos on a t-shirt. But Star Citizen fans are really used to paying any amount of money for anything because that's all you can do right now. So it's a lot better for them.
I mean, yeah, it's a shopping experience. Yeah. As are nothing against people who play Star Citizen because most hobbies are a shopping experience. So
yes,
not against that.
Now, we're going to talk a lot about Diablo 4, but this little news item came up and I was going to skip it over, but Sema had a couple interesting points just about duping in general. So there's another duping situation, and they suspended trading in Diablo 4 because of this duping temporarily, and it's still going on now. So this has been going on for about 3 days now that they've suspended trading. But yeah, as you were saying, Sema, why does this stuff happen? For one, for two, who is spending their day unplugging
Right.
their router and
But I feel like it could be like a metagame for people that, for a small set of people, that whenever there's a new patch of any sort, or a new ability, or a new zone, or a UI update or whatever, they just dig in. Like, I'll try this and I'll try that and I'll stand by this door and do that.
yeah,
I guess.
and they try everything, or they hear about something and then they try to figure out how they can exploit it. Exploit some other weird situation that somebody else ran into and mentioned. I'm sure that's part of the fun of it. I mean, that's fun. Hacking is fun. But
You commented that it had something to do with how the databases are constructed. So maybe people who are like, database experts, but they're also gamers, or they are AI expert, like in their day job, they write hooks into AIs and stuff. And yeah.
maybe.
But I
Right,
do
because
wonder why dupe, the actual process of duping things, comes up in games still. I feel like it should be like nixed by now.
right. I would think so too. But yeah, my point was it's not a transactional database behind these games. There's no two-phase commit. And as such, stuff can happen. And if you find the seams where data is just getting like thrown around or dumped around in scripts and left behind because somebody cancels a transaction in the middle, or dumps their character out, stuff can happen. All right, BC, you put this one in the news, and this I think is interesting, and another one of these to watch. We did talk about Path of Exiles a few weeks ago after PAX West, because I played it there. I played PoE too, but tell us a little bit about Last Epoch.
Yeah, Last Epoch is another action RPG, a little bit like Diablo and Path of Exile. It's in early access right now, and they just announced a release date in February 2024. I know a lot of people who are playing either Diablo or Path of Exile or both are pretty excited about Last Epoch. The early access version already has a bunch of endgame activities, so it should be a fun alternative to Diablo and Path of Exile if you feel like a bit of a change, but you still want to kill demons. This might be a fun one to jump into.
I think it does look good. I watched a couple of videos on it. I did play Path of Exile, same thing. I wish they were a little bit different. More different than Diablo. What it seems to me to be like, and Path of Exiles is definitely this. And this is maybe not the same exactly, but Path of Exiles is ex-Diablo developers and other people got together and said we could do Diablo better. And so it's Diablo, but it's their better Diablo. And that's fine because more is still better, and you could go back and forth between these games and still have a lot of fun as a gamer. But I wonder, and I know there are ways to do interesting ARPG games that don't have to be a Diablo clone. And I kind of wished some of these would branch off in those directions. Do it in a sci-fi environment, or do it. Well, we're going to get. You could even Everspace is an example of which you could kind of think as an ARPG in space, as a spaceship. More things like that, I think, then get really interesting and really fun. So that's what I like to see.
Yeah, innovation is always a way to keep a genre exciting. One of the things that I'd like to see would be more player-created content. I really wonder why not just ARPGs, but other gaming genres aren't leaning into that more, because there's no way developers can ever come up with enough content. People are always going to get through it. people even get through all of Path of Exile's content, and there's a lot there. So I'd love to see them innovate maybe in that direction, giving players some of the tools to create their own.
That's a great point.
I definitely hear you that I think what they're trying to do with Last Epoch is a little bit like what the developers tried to do with Path of Exile. Hey, we think we can do Diablo a little better, but a lot of it is similar. I mean, the end game activities, monoliths and arena are like maps in Path of Exile or Greater in Diablo. So there's definitely a lot of familiarity there, just in a different setting. I think they're trying to thread the needle a little bit between Diablo and Path of Exile in the sense that they want it to be a little bit deeper than the Diablo games tend to be, but not so deep that it's like Path of Exile where you open up the tree and go, uh-oh, I need to read an encyclopedia to figure out what to do here. And that seems to be the sweet spot they're aiming for.
That I could totally see that now that you mentioned that. I was where was it? I looked at their ability tree and I saw that and I said, this looks like Path of Exile Light, because it's that same kind of like constellation. But in going the other direction, it's definitely much more customization and much more detail in ability chains that you can create builds around than Diablo has, which is one of the things that the lead players are criticizing Diablo for right now. You just don't have that much customization within your abilities. You pick up Corpse Explosion and you get like two choices of how Corpse Explosion can go, and that's it. So yeah, I can see it does sort of fall squarely in between those. That's interesting. But yeah, more is still good. And gamers, what we don't need to do is decide what sucks because you want to pick a winner and everything else is terrible. Because why not have more? ¿Por qué no los tres? All three of them. Let's go. Let's play them all. So that's
it's like those taco ads, right? Where they say, which kind of taco do you want? Why not both? Exactly. More games, encourages everyone to make better games. So
and it's
I agree.
It's a time-honored tradition in movies and books and other types of things that you consume, is that there's remakes, reboots, copycats, genres.
Yeah, genres, and then 100 books in that genre. And I do this with books and BC. You even were talking about movies before as well. You're right, Sema. Do you ever like read a book and go, I hope there's no other books like this because this is obviously the superior book. No, or boy, this book is it's not as good. This book is only a 7 out of 10, so this book is trash. Thumbs down because this other book was slightly better. No, that's not how that works. I put this one at. Did you see this one, Sema? I know you saw the video. Oh wait, no, that's all right. Where's the video? The video is around here somewhere. I will bring it up. It was the 10 ways to die in WoW Classic video.
Oh yeah,
that Blizzard put together. Why don't you describe that, and I'll pull it up here too.
Okay, it was the top 10.
Yeah,
by number.
Top 10.
Yeah,
right. In rank order. Yeah.
So something like 1.9 million deaths already, and death in hardcore WoW is permadeath. So that's a lot. Like on day 1, they had 90,000 deaths. So anyway, they put together this really entertaining video, and it was the top 10 things that people die from. And so number 1, the very top one, was falling off things.
Yeah.
But and then also in there, drowning was in there, which was like, it was like number 6 or whatever. But it was really fun because it showed the actual mobs that had killed the most players. And every time they brought up a new mob, I could remember back in the day when I first started playing WoW and I was brand new at the game, these were all the mobs that like terrified me then.
Right.
So it's like the Defias Pillager, who was a caster in Westfall, the kobolds in the caves.
Right. So those fire casters outside the instance over there.
Yeah, so people were saying
terrible.
And I love this idea of Blizzard actually giving numbers and stats. That made it so fun to watch. It wasn't just some YouTuber saying, I bet most people die from this. It was the actual data. And people were responding in the comments below saying, yeah, now show us like the top 10 deaths of max level players. Because this was a lot of like low level mobs. So a lot of people who didn't realize
the falling is
there's the
hilarious.
elevator.
And the elevator. The
Thunder Bluff.
Undercity elevator in Thunder Bluff. People falling off of there. Yeah, and that's the number one. Yeah, how many people? That's killed 74,000 characters.
And when you're in the game and you're playing, I've mentioned this before, but you get a pop-up if you have a certain add-on that tells you when somebody died and how they died and their last words. But it's kind of funny when you get like so-and-so died from drowning. You're like,
Right.
man, you should not be underwater if you're going to go AFK. Oh, it's 2.9 million permadeaths, not 1.9. Yeah.
2.961. Crazy.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. But there's a ton of deaths that weren't to those top 5 causes, right? So like the top one falling was like 75,000 deaths, right? Which is a fraction of 3 million, but
right. There's a million ways to die.
Yeah.
But yeah, these just happen to be the top 10.
Yeah.
Fun. One other thing that's happened, last news item for the week that I wanted to talk about for a couple minutes, although we'll probably do a whole show on it later, is in the last week, the Quest 3 released. So the Meta Quest 3 headset, which I have right here in my hands.
Are you going to model it for us?
No, I am not. And that's one of the problems. And maybe I'll talk about that when we do a show on this, about why this is the best headset on the market right now, but why VR continues to be, and this will not change it, continues to be a niche product and a niche genre. It's interesting, and this is a good headset, but my summary evaluation of the headset is, if you don't have a headset, this is the best one on the market for most people. And there are variations where you might get something else, but compared to the Quest 2, and again, this is like a generation beyond. This is multiple years beyond. Compared to the Quest 2, it's slightly better resolution and a slightly better field of view. And it's slightly slimmer in the front, and it weighs about the same. And it's not revolutionary. And what I was hoping for at this point in the life cycle, because we're still early in the life cycle and adoption curve of VR, is I was hoping for something revolutionary, something game-changing from everyone. And Apple's is not it either. And I'm even less optimistic about Apple's changing anything in the market. And we can talk about that. I think when I think back of cell phones and how that started in the late 80s, early 90s, up until the 2015, when things started to sort of like taper off, and that was the end of innovation. Now I've got my iPhone 15, and it's not much different than the iPhones of 10 years ago. But in the early days, when it was like a giant bag phone that you plugged into the lighter of a car, and then we got the bricks, and then we got the Motorola flip phone, and you could dial the numbers on it. And then you had like the BlackBerry. BlackBerry came out, and you could like text. Oh my gosh! And then Nokia, the little Nokia candy bar phones, and suddenly there's like a little screen, and you could like play Snake on this little tiny screen. Oh my gosh! Is this like this? There's like one game on here. Each generation from that point forward was transformational, up until the point now where we have a full computer, a full PC that takes over the place of PCs for most of us and has been transformative in society.
And yet subsequent releases of phones now are just more resolution, better camera.
Yeah. Now it's tapered off, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But VR, I feel, is at a place where until it gets to the point where it is, again, a generation ahead, a transformational leap in hardware, that it's going to continue to remain niche. Because while this is very cool, and it's still not something It's still kind of expensive. It's clunky. You got to put this thing on your head. You're blocked out from the rest of your house. Yes, it's got pass-through and AR, and that is a selling feature of this headset. It's still not great though. And the pass-through, like I can see my screen and I can see that like that Steam is running on my screen. I can't read the text though. The resolution's not that good where I could be like doing work with this on my head and nobody's going to walk. Well, people are, but the general public is not going to walk down the street with one of these on their head. So it's just going to be a thing that enthusiasts are going to get and they're going to use it. And the hardcore one, thousands of people will maybe use it every day. Most people that buy it, the vast majority of people that even bother to buy it, will use it once in a while.
When you say the hardcore people who use it every day, are they using it for games or you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
what would make me want to jump into VR would be, like, for instance, someone was telling me last week that a museum that's not that far from me, like 200 miles, has a new show from XYZ artist that I'm interested in. If I could pop my VR headset on and visit that museum and see that show,
well,
then
that exists. I mean, those do exist. And I mean, you can go to K-pop concerts in your headset. And it's supposed to be a pretty good experience. It's still only like deep enthusiasts that are even bothering to try that though. So
because it's still very limited.
Yes. It's limited and niche. It's supposed to be very good though. And I have experienced VR, like 360 VR video experiences, even like stuff that like news reports that New York Times has filmed in downtown New York. And it's really, really good. But I could just sit on my couch and watch it on the TV.
Or if I could go to a Broadway show. I mean, like, there has to be, but it has to be changes at all different levels, right? Like there has to be a way for the Broadway theater to make money from you doing that.
Yep.
So they have to be a sponsor somehow. So that's going to be, for me, transformative when it becomes a part of life like that.
We'll have to see when the devices catch up to the point where it could be much more mainstream too. And then you'll have people investing.
Yeah. Right.
It's a little bit chicken and the egg still.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the projections, it's still linear growth and they still think it's going to be, X amount of billions of dollars of growth. And entertainment is really only a portion of the overall growth of the industry. I don't know where, because I worked in industry, it's only like 30% of the pie of where money is being spent on VR. In the business world, you can use VR for training. You can use it for some task augmentation. I think money's being spent there to try it out, but nobody's doing it. I've spent the last decade trying to get businesses to realize where the business case is to be doing great things, and they try it, and nobody does it. Like Bob on the shop floor will try it because you told him he's got to try it for this, whatever this case study, and then they're not gonna put on a stupid headset. They got to drive the forklift. So that's where that's at too. So when it can be the size of Ray-Bans and everybody can wear it while they're walking down the street, and you have things like turn-by-turn directions where it's painting a line on the sidewalk for you, and you get to the point where you think, I'm just going to grab my glasses and leave the house and not bring your phone, that's when it'll be transformative. That's when the industry might change. And if we ever get to that point, that's where it might become mainstream. That said, super fun. Next week or the week after, we'll pick a week. I'll talk about games and experiences. I'll show you what the AR looks like. I'll show you why 8 years ago on the HoloLens, AR was just as good, but it's still fun. But I'll show you a couple games that I'm going to try out and play as well, like Dungeons of Eternity. We'll talk about that. All right. Thank you, everyone. This podcast is brought to you by all of you out there. We really appreciate everyone's support with comments on our Discord, on all the social networks, and especially people that are continuing to subscribe. And this is continuing to go up on YouTube and iTunes. That's been really important to us because then we know where people are interested and we know that the new content is hitting. So continue to do that. And if you have a friend who's looking for a video game podcast, video or audio, send them our way. Big thanks to the chat room here during the live show, who we always like chatting with both before, during, and after the show. You can get the links to all the ways to join us and join the live shows by checking out newoverlords.com. And especially in our Discord there, we show all the time when we're going live and that kind of thing. You know, this podcast is also brought to you by our guild, Alea Iacta Est, which is a big family-friendly gaming community where Sema and I and BC play games quite a bit. BC is playing quite a bit of ESO and Diablo. If you want to get into ESO, you still doing the Wednesday night dungeons night in ESO, right, BC?
The Wednesday night group is still running. I had to step back because I got 2 kids under 2, but there's still a crew that runs every Wednesday night, and the recent expansion added a lot more content. There's lots of folks still over there. They have a regular fun night on Fridays as well. So definitely, if you're interested in ESO, you're already there and looking for folks to group up with, there's lots of activity. They even have some card tournaments with the card game that's part of ESO as well. So lots of different things depending on what you're interested in.
So if you want to get in on any of that, definitely check out AIE. You can get to our Discord and everything else at aie-guild.org. Fun place. Come join us. All right. I know I played it in the pre-show, but I'll play it here for everybody. This is what we're doing, especially BC and I right now. We're encountering this guy.
I am Seer of the Ancients, and you will serve.
Seer of the Ancients. This Diablo. I have been having quite a bit of fun with it. We're going to talk about it quite a bit now. That Seer of the Ancients, though, he's the main character of the Season 2 sort of storyline. He's one of the main bad guys. I don't know if he's the only main bad guy, but he's like the main bad guy that I've encountered so far. My character, I was talking about this in the pre-show. Your character meets like an avatar of his, like a ghost of his, and he gives that line to you, and he says, "You will serve." And my character, just like in a really conversational tone of voice, just says, "I decline." Here's the thing, no, and that's it. So it was like 2 words, and then he goes on about, oh my gosh. So the deal is that's vampires everywhere. Vampires are invading sanctuary, and why aren't you got bit? Why aren't you turning into a vampire? Oh, it's because you have Lilith's blood, because you are tainted by the demons, and now you are not transforming into a vampire. And what is that going to do for things? Kind of turns you into a little bit of a Blade situation, where now you get to use the vampire powers and become a vampire hunter and fight against the vampires and stop them from taking over the world, because you get all of their strengths and benefits without the weaknesses of being enslaved to Seer. So let's start with just the overview of the general feelings, and then we can walk our way through the rest of everything else, including talking about the state of Diablo 4 in general. But let's start with just the season 2. What do you think in BC? What are your thoughts so far? What do you feel like?
I'm enjoying it more than I did season 1. I enjoyed both, but it feels like there's more to do. There's more drops, and the powers are a little bit more transformative. So it's accessible right away, right at level 1. It's always on. The blood harvest is in some zone of the world at all times. So it's great for leveling. The levels pass by really quickly. So I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a step up from last season. And that's what I've been hearing from most people, that everyone feels like it's a little bit more engaging, more rewarding.
Did you play all of last season?
I did. I set myself a goal of clearing Nightmare Dungeon Tier 100, which I did. And then I switched to D3 for the new season of D3 because they had solo self-found mode, which is fun. So I'm going to set myself a goal this year of doing that again, and then also killing all the new endgame bosses.
Okay. Have you done Uber Lilith in Eternal and Season 1?
I didn't try Uber Lilith. Maybe I'll do that this season, maybe next season. It needs a lot of practice from what I can tell. You've got to run it a bunch of times, and with 2 kids under 2, it'll take me a lot of days to rack up the number of runs to kind of learn the mechanics, I think. But it's a good one. I like that it exists. I like that there's something that's a little out of reach for me in the amount of time I have right now, because it gives me something to go back to. If there's other stuff that if I've done everything else, I've still got that to stretch for.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we'll get to that a little bit when I get to some of like the elite and streamer content creator feedback of some of their comments on that, which I thought was a little bit not mainstream, but interesting. But yeah, I agree. I did not play Season 1. I played the base game up to like level 72, I think was my main character in the base game. And figured I would... Season 1 just came so fast on the heels of the base game that I wasn't ready to jump back in. I was ready at this point, and I knew I would be. I knew I would want to try a season at some point. So I jumped in. I'm now 51, I think, and I've completed the Cathedral of Light and moved into World Tier 3 so that I could start getting the whatever they call the sacred drops and the uniques and things like that to start dropping. So I also liked the season. I liked the vampiric abilities are cool, but not transformative. So it's not as interesting as I thought they would be, but they're very cool, and they do help a lot, and they do some interesting things. But it's not like you get a vampiric ability and you like completely change your build or rotation. But they are still fun. As you said, it's not Helltide. What is it called? The
Blood Harvest.
Blood Harvest. So Helltide still exists, but Blood Harvest is like another zone that's got the vampire stuff going on, and there's always running, but it's like a Helltide for people that are familiar with base Diablo. And that I found, especially as I was playing World Tier 1 just to level up, was great. And I liked it so much better than Helltide. Of course, I finished Helltide when I was playing it like World Tier 3 or 4, and Helltides and World Tier 4 are just a pain. I mean, you stand still for more than 3 seconds anywhere and you're dead. Whereas World Tier 1, because of how fast you're leveling and the vampiric abilities and knowing how to put a build together, I was pretty much immortal. I could do... In fact, I was too overpowered. So it made the Blood Harvest really fun. Blood Harvest, you're also getting a ton of gear. It's like dropping all over the place because you're opening the coffins all over the place. So I'm showing on the screen here the world boss fight. This is one of the first times where I was playing the game at level 41 and got to a point where I ran into something challenging and died about 8 times on this world boss fight. And you can see a bunch of other people dying too. I'd forgotten the mechanics. I still, just looking at the fight, don't know where to stand. But otherwise, I wasn't dying at all. Like there, he does Avarice, the big gold demon, swings that thing around. Am I supposed to stand under him? Am I supposed to?
Yeah, you're supposed to stand either under him or really far away.
Okay, I wasn't. I was mostly standing under him in the second half of the fight, but it seemed like even if you were just a little bit away from his butt, you would still get whacked by that. Anyway.
Pro tip, Max, for when you make it to World Tier 4 is as soon as possible, fight a world boss, just stand back, let everyone else kill them. There'll probably be some level 100s and they'll kill them in no time. And then the loot will be 925 item power
Really?
gear. Yeah, you should be able to get a
Sweet.
nine. The key thing you want to look for is a weapon that's 925 item power, the max that it can be, and then you'll be set in World Tier 4. Even if it's just that you have, it'll make it significantly easier. You'll start being able to kill things, and
Yeah.
your progression will accelerate from there.
So this was just last night. I went from World Tier 1 to World Tier 3 because I completed Cathedral Light. Cathedral Light in World Tier 2 was no problem at all at level 50. Even that was easy. And then I got to World Tier 3 and I went to a Blood Harvest, and within like the first 5 minutes I died like 3 times. But it was mostly because I was getting those, is it Blood Seekers? Are those the extra vampires that show up? The vampire assassins that like hunt
they're
you
a
down?
class like a druid or a rogue or a barbarian. Yeah, they're versions of a player character, the Bloodseekers.
Yeah, they're NPCs, but yeah, it's as if player characters were coming to hunt you down, and you'll get them in pairs. So you might be in the middle of a big bunch of stuff that you're fighting for, doing a mini event or doing in something in the zone, and then a couple of those will jump in, and they can be bad news because they'll like jump on you and stun you and stuff like that too.
Do you have 5 vampiric powers equipped?
4. I only have 4 because I was waiting for one more. I think I do have 5, but one is like a lame one.
Yeah, because they can really help. There's some of them that you said you were playing a Necromancer. I am as well. There's ones that are things like you gain X% damage reduction for every percent life that you are below 50%. There's another one that's you gain a certain percentage of life every time you cast a skill. Things like that. Leaning into vampiric powers a little more defensive might help you, or just making sure that you have some defensive affixes on your chest and pants, things like that. That could help.
Yeah, maybe. Another part of it was because I was so OP and immortal in World Tier 1. This was the first time I even had to like dodge anything, and I kind of like got out of the rhythm, out of the muscle memory of bothering to dodge and bothering to like look for stuff on the ground and any of that. So there's a little bit on me just not even bothering to play the game. But yeah. So the vampiric abilities are pretty cool. You do have to level them up. When you're leveling them up, I have like 1,500 of the potent blood or whatever, or 2,000. I don't know. I have a lot, and I've not been leveling up my abilities. Do you just pound it into your best in class abilities that you expect to have long term?
Yes, but it's random. So when you bring up the menu, you can only pick from 3 that seem to be randomly selected. So usually you just try to find ones that you have equipped or ones that will be on your endgame build, level those up. And if none of those show up, you just plug it into anything. With the amount that we're leveling through Blood Harvest, I think it shouldn't be a problem to just level everything up eventually anyway.
Got it. So I will start leveling some of those up more than I have as well. But yeah, so along with everything that went into season 2, we're also now getting sort of some fixes that were into the base game. And I think I've got a list here. Everybody's super excited about the horse. So the horse got fixed. Woo! And I mean, it is good. I think obviously we did need that, and that was useful.
Yeah, I enjoy not getting stopped by pebbles.
Right. Right. Being able to small stick on the ground and your horse just stops dead and has no idea how to get over that. Being able to bash through those barriers as well, that was always a pain for riding across the zone. They said they also made dungeons a little bit more random in terms of their layouts. I didn't notice it too much, but I didn't notice. I don't mind the repetition as much either, though, myself, because I'll just get into a zone and do it. Even if I'm doing a dungeon for the third or fourth time. I know some people are doing dungeons like 100 times, and maybe you really want a little bit of randomization more in that case. What do you think of that? Have you sort of experienced that? Do dungeons really seem like they're shaking up the layouts a little bit more and feeling good?
I think it's a step in the right direction because they're addressing some of the backtracking by just making sure that the objectives are sort of on your path. The other thing that I'm hoping they'll take a look at with some of them is just that they're really long. You'll sort of have an objective, free 6 prisoners or something, and then you'll finish that one and you'll go through to the next zone in the dungeon, and then you'll have to do something else, like collect 2 bloodstones and bring them back to an altar. And then once you do that, then you get to fight the final boss. And I was thinking to myself during season 1, when I was having to go through that over and over and over, that if they just had one objective, it would actually get rid of a lot of complaints, I think. If you say to me, you've got to find 6 prisoners and you fight the boss, okay, that seems like a good length for a dungeon. It's a bit more bite-sized. But when you sort of finish one of those and then you've got to do another one and then you've got to do the boss, it started to drag a little. I think they could make it a little shorter, more action-packed, and then keep people going through that way. So I wonder whether they'll look at that as well. It just felt like some of them ended up being really long. But the less backtracking is definitely appreciated. It makes it much more enjoyable. I'm sure on my journey to clearing tier 100 again this time, it'll feel a lot better.
They also updated some other quality of life fixes to things like storage. They changed the way gems work, so you not getting 1,000 of those, filling up your bank tabs, your stash tabs all over the place. They changed itemization a little bit as well, I noticed, and supposedly made it easier to do things like item comparison. I still find it quite difficult myself, but I rely on guides and other elite people to tell me, is +1 to my corpse explosion better than 20 int? I mean, how am I supposed to be able to do that math or make that comparison without somebody like either doing calculus or data mining or something?
You'll be pleased to know, Max, I have a spreadsheet for whenever I come across a new weapon and I'm not sure. I plug in a few values and it tells me which one will end up doing more damage for my character based on some calculations that they have on max roll for everyone. So yeah, there's definitely an element of that. I think for me the biggest challenge with itemization was the sheer number of affixes.
Yeah,
there's just so many of them, and some of the conditions feel like they're not going to apply much of the time. It's made it feel like, you know what? I'm just going to junk everything I just found, my entire stash, because why would I look through them once you hit about level 80? And if you're interested, there's a very funny Carbot Animations video about this. I don't know if you've seen it, but it sort of makes fun of that whole exercise. It's well worth watching. It's very funny.
It's crazy, and I know that's part of what people want out of these games too, and it creates an opportunity for meta content to be created. It creates an opportunity for streamers and people that write blogs and people that write websites and guides and all of those kinds of things to do things. But for the average player, it's insane. It's so Sema, the way it works is you have all the base kind of stats that you would expect in like RPG. You have like int and wisdom and strength, and each of those affect you a little bit, but you're gonna have a main stat for your class. So there's that. Then you have the secondary stats. You have like crit and I mean crit is the main secondary stat because there's third and fourth and fifth and sixth. So there's crit, there's resistances, and resistances are finally kind of useful. In fact, are needed on some of the fights now in interesting ways. But then they like added a few other classes of stats, like lucky hit. So it'll be like you can build up your chance of getting a lucky hit, and on lucky hit, you have a chance of some effect happening. So you maybe you've got like 10% chance of a lucky hit, and on each lucky hit that you get for that 10% chance, you have a 10% chance of stunning the mob. Well, if you do the math, that means you have a 1% chance per hit to stun a mob. But so now you got to worry about lucky hit. Overpower is another one of these. So when you get an overpowering hit, well, then something else can potentially happen, and it's like the layering of all these things on top of each other.
Well, and then there's also the issue of damage to crowd-controlled enemies, poisoned enemies, on Tuesdays while your left leg is raised.
Yeah. And it's not crowd-controlled, which would be great. It's if they're slowed, then that's one class of damage. If they're frozen, that's another class of damage. If they're dazed, that's another class of damage. If they're it's like if they're like just CC'd at all, then and it applied, you could figure it out a little bit. But when it's so niche each type of damage, what it provides the opportunity to do then is to say, okay, well, if I can get a bonus only on frozen mobs, well, then I need to stack other things on either my abilities or my other pieces of gear that create a frozen effect more often. And then make sure I'm putting together all of the on frozen, this thing happens, and these things make frozen mobs, rather than just it being simple like any kind of CC gets some kind of bonus. So you can see the point of it, but it just does get crazy. And then
I can see how they got there. Even the content creators that I've been listening to, I think, are starting to make the point that there's a difference between complexity that you introduce where there are interesting trade-offs or interesting ways to build into it, and complexity that you've created just through a sheer volume of all of the different affixes.
Yeah.
And I feel like the first kind, that complexity you introduce through interesting trade-offs is more the direction that everyone would benefit from. And I think they're starting to go that way. For example, they've now, because they've just introduced resistances and it works basically the same way as it did in D2 and does in Path of Exile, there's now this interesting trade-off where, I need a certain amount of armor and I need a certain amount of resistances for my defense. And so some of that can come on, different types of gear. Some of that will come on my Paragon board. Some of it I can get through legendary aspects. And so now you've got this interesting trade-off of, I found this really good ring, but now I don't have this resistance. Where else am I going to make that up? So that's the kind of complexity I think it's a little more interesting, as opposed to just having so many options that it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just to wrap all that up, the last one that really got me that I wanted to explain to Sema too was there are, on your piece of gear, you can have +1 rank of an ability. So say I have Corpse Explosion as number 4 on my bar down here, and there's 5 ranks of Corpse Explosion. And when I put points into my build tree, I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it increases some amount. The first point is Corpse Explosion. Second point is 10% cooldown. The third point is 15% faster. The fourth point is 17%. You don't know. I don't know what putting a 6th point in it does to that ability, because they don't show you on the build tree because it only goes up to 5. So you can have 6, 7, 8 by having pieces of gear which have, +1, +1, +1 on 3 pieces of gear to Corpse Explosion. And then you have to trade that off against core stats or crit or overpower, on overpower, do X amount of extra damage. And that was a complete mystery to me, to try to do the math on what a rank of an ability, how powerful a rank +1 rank of an ability was. So that's still.
Yeah, you almost have to take out a point, go bump it down to 4, look what it was doing when you put it back up to 5, and then infer that way.
Yeah,
to be able to
even
figure
there,
it
there's
out.
diminishing returns, so you'll
right.
Close. It'll be close, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the way that a lot of people have approached it is they just assume that that's probably a good thing to spend your skill points on. I know I did
Yeah.
in season 1. I played a Wenado druid, and so I think I ended up with about plus 13 into tornado, and that's what all the guides said. So at a certain point, people just stop actually doing the math and just go, well, it's probably better. I'll just do that.
Right. Yeah. And if somebody wants to go through super extensive testing, A/B testing on all of it, well, that's good. Then they get to put up a video on YouTube and get a bunch of views because they created interesting meta content that is valuable, and they did work.
Yeah, and they're introducing a target dummy so people can do that, which is very
Ooh,
exciting.
Interesting. That is interesting because it is hard to find a solid enough target that's consistent enough currently in the game.
In any
to
game.
do some of that. Yeah, right. Without a target dummy. There used to be patchwork in WoW before target dummies were tuned to be able to be good.
You and
for,
19 of
raid
your best
parsing.
friends. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was some couple standard fights where people could do that kind of judging of stuff. But yeah. So with all of that in mind, BC, what is your overall assessment, and has it changed from the way you felt about Diablo 4 in general from launch to now, and your personal view? Is it, was it a 8 out of 10 at launch and now it's a 9 out of 10, or how would you sort of characterize it that way?
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been very good at giving a rank out of
and it's
10, but
it's fun, and it's more fun. I mean, I guess that's what I'm classifying it as.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing it in the beta, and then playing it at launch, and playing season 1, and I'm having even more fun in season 2. So I'm not sure what I would give it out of 10, and honestly, I think everyone's out of 10 ends up being subjective.
Yeah.
So but I think from my perspective, it has always been a really good game from levels 1 to 75. So in pre-season, on launch in season 1, and now again in season 2, having a blast from 1 to 75. The campaign was fun. I thought the story was good. I heard some criticisms, but I enjoyed it. It felt like it had more depth than the D3 story, and there wasn't any of that comic book. I'm going to call you and laugh about how powerful I am, and then you go and kill him in a couple of hits. And then it was darker. I liked the darker theme. It felt more visceral. There was an interesting antagonist. Lilith wasn't just the stereotypical evil. Some of the voice acting was wonderful. As you're leveling up, there was a much greater variety of activities, like just the world events, Legion, strongholds. I really hope they do more with those. I feel like that's a bit of a sleeper content. They could maybe expand on that. The combat felt really smooth. That's something Diablo's always done better than Path of Exile, at least so far. Maybe PoE 2 will change that. Combat felt satisfying. The progression from 1 to 75 is really rewarding. You keep feeling your character getting stronger. There's regular upgrades. I even liked they had a throwback to Star Wars: The Old Republic. They even had a little bit of a Datacron hunt kind of thing in there. In Diablo, searching for the Lilith statues, which was fun. A little bit of exploration there, which I enjoyed. So that was that. All of that was great. I had a blast from 1 to 75. And what I'm hearing from most people, and I felt this as well, is it really starts to slow down after that. There's definitely things to do. I mean, I have a couple of level 100 characters. I'm clearly enjoying myself, and there's clearly stuff to do. But it definitely slowed down after that. And it seems like they're starting to add more and better content in season 1, in season 2. We talked a little bit about how they're improving Nightmare Dungeons. Helltides, I'm hoping they just make them a bit more like Blood Harvest, more drops, more mobs. The Whispers are better than D3 bounties, and they're more rewarding now. You get more gold. And now they're adding these 5 new endgame bosses. I'm excited to farm Duriel and try to get a Hologrim crest. I'm not. I don't know how many times I'll have to kill him to get it, but it's something to shoot for. So they're definitely adding a bunch. In season 3, they talked about adding some kind of competitive content with leaderboards. Maybe it's going to be a little bit like Greater Rifts in Diablo 3. So it feels like they're improving that end game content. And so that's why I say, I think it's becoming more fun. I'm hoping it's going to continue being more fun as they add more stuff. It feels like they probably want to do something more with crafting. There's even a little bit of evidence with some of the mats that sort of aren't really utilized, that maybe they've got more plans there. That'll definitely add something else at end game to do. I'm also hoping they'll start reintroducing the season content, because that's one of the things that Path of Exile does really well. I really enjoyed Delve League. Great, I can still keep delving. Every new season, it's still there. So I'm hoping they start to bring back some of the Season 1 content, Season 2 content, introduce that into the base game so that there's more to do, and you've got more variety. And I think they will, because it's me just speculating. Season 1, the powers were on rings and amulets, jewelry. Season 2, it's just on armor. So I feel like maybe they're angling that direction and they're going to do that. So I feel excited. The game was a lot of fun to begin with. They're adding more stuff to do. I'm enjoying myself. And if I had to say one thing that I think is the most exciting about Season 2, I'd say it's the way that they shook up the meta a little bit about what is the best content to run, and encouraged people to run all of the content. Because in Season 1, it was really all about Nightmare Dungeons. I just spammed Nightmare Dungeons for hours and hours and hours. And that's okay to do once, but I really like that this time you sort of need to engage with all the different content. You need to get mats from all of them to summon the different endgame bosses. Nightmare Dungeons you run for glyphs, Blood Harvest for the potent blood to upgrade your powers, Hell Tides you get the currency to re-roll, Whispers helps you get gold to re-roll and for everything else. So I hope they keep that up as well, that as they do expand the content, that they keep each of them a little bit rewarding and something you need to do. That feels like the piece that could be better, and it seems like they're heading in the right direction. So I've been having a blast, and I'm feeling excited for coming seasons.
So that's interesting, and I think it gets to some of my meta criticism about what I've heard from like the content creators and the elite reviewers of the game and sort of where they're at. I've kept up a little bit, and especially when Season 2 came out, watched a few of the top content creators, people I like that make good videos, and what their sort of assessment was. And what I tend to hear, which I think is weird, is a lot of them, they over-optimize their time. And as you said, so if it's like Nightmare Dungeons, they'll just do Nightmare Dungeon. They'll do one half of one Nightmare Dungeon 5,000 times because that's the most efficient. And still, I mean, that's even for Season 2. There's the first half of a certain dungeon where from 1 to 50, that's what you're supposed to do. Me as a much more casual player than anybody like that, I never even knew that I was missing out by not running like, the nth Nightmare Dungeon, 50 times in a row. Because if I felt like going and doing a Helltide, I would go and do a Helltide. If a Legion event came up, I would go, and that sounded interesting, I would go and do a Legion event. I wasn't doing the math enough to say, this is only 80% as valuable. I was still getting rewarded, and I felt rewarded, and I just did it. Now, as you're saying, BC, if they can also go through the point where not only do you need to do it for game mechanics perspective, like because there's a particular kind of currency or there's a particular kind of reward, for one, and for two, also balance the baseline, experience and, gear drops and all of those kinds of things across those. It's also going to feel good for the people that are min-maxing both their time and their classes and abilities. So yeah, it's got to be tough when if if you're like a normal human developing a game, to cater to, but I mean, which you still have to, but to cater to these people that are going to optimize the hell out of the time and that they play your game. Another side thing, and I even have an article I brought up, and I'm not saying that this is this is somebody's actually suffering from this, but this is Psych Central. Hurry sickness. This is a recognized situation you can get yourself into, a mental situation you can get yourself into, where you stress yourself out by forcing yourself to hurry through and feeling like you're behind in anything you do, to the point where you try to do like the shave a second off of day-to-day, like even like day-to-day little tasks. You could tie your shoes 1 second faster if you tie them this particular way, so you do that and you hurry through your life in that way. And I feel like a lot of these content creators are almost forcing themselves into this situation. Like a common, you'll see these common themes when you look across their pluses and minuses. And I know they need to have some sort of criticisms to be taken seriously in their reviews, but they'll say things like, upgrading vampiric powers. Boy, this is a shit show. Can you believe I have to click 3 times? They could definitely, optimize this so you only had to click twice. I'm thinking in my head, it's not like it's taking an extra minute per reroll. It's an extra, half a second of a click. I mean, I'm seeing them do it on the screen. They're like, you can also just, click the X here, but, not a lot of people are going to do it like that. But if I had to click one less time with, then we would get through that upgrading faster. You're stressing yourself out. Now, they're incentivized in a lot of ways to do all of the content as fast as humanly possible so that they can create content around it as well. But I think they're harming their own experience, or they're encouraging other people to harm their own experience by presenting this idea that unless you're hurrying through every single bit of everything, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
And I
I kind of have always resisted that notion that to do the game right, you have to do this small piece of it ad infinitum until you reach this state of numbers.
Right. Yeah.
One of the things I liked about season 2, actually, of Diablo 4 was there were multiple content creators that I watched who created leveling guides and actually said, there's a leveling guide. If you want to level the fastest way, technically it's to do this dungeon and just do it halfway through and just keep doing that on repeat. But that's going to mean that you're going to be really bored and, you won't have a bunch of gear and everything. So here's the fun way to level. And then they spend most of the video talking about, here's the fun leveling guide. You're going to level up almost as quickly, but you're going to get exposed to a bunch more content. It'll be more fun. And I liked that. There seemed to be a little bit of a reaction against the kind of thing that you're talking about, Max, from some of the content creators, where they were focusing a little bit more on here's an efficient way to level, but also it's fun. Someone in chat, Apple has said Rax did that. Riker did that. There were a bunch of content creators who went that direction, which I really liked this season. And that way people can make a choice. If what's important to you, you can level that way. So I enjoyed that. I kind of took that approach. I want to do a little bit of everything. I'm going to be pretty efficient about it, but if I'm only 80 or 90% as fast, that's fine. So I like that there was some of that people were bringing in. Just have fun. Here's a way to make it a little bit more fun. You'll still be pretty efficient about it. So I hope we see more of that from some of overcoming seasons as well.
And those guys are great. I mean, Brax is great, and as you said, Riker. I watched his video in particular, and a couple others. They're great content creators, and they're also just reasonable people. I'm not trying to criticize any of their approaches. As I said, I know they also, and you can hear them when they set up their video, like their review video. They say, I'm going to get to the part where I'm talking about the downsides too, so don't worry about that, because people love the hot takes, and it's like nobody hates games more than gamers, and they want to hear why they should hate it.
It's like Star Wars fans, right? No one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I think Riker did one of his reviews, and at the end he showed his Twitch chat, and he's like asked his Twitch chat, who's having fun, and he did like all the pros, and here's all the cons, here's the downsides, here's where they've just not met the mark, and with the problems with Diablo 4, they really still got to get ahead, and this is where other RPGs are doing better. And then you turn to the chat and like, who's having fun? Type W's in chat, and it was like 99% W's. Everybody's having a good time. It's like,
yep.
We don't have to criticize we don't have to criticize every game as much as we do.
Well, the other reality is that a lot of the people who are having fun aren't engaging in these discussions. They're just like playing and having fun as well.
And normal people aren't spending their day watching streamers and making their own content and doing a podcast.
Right. And that's what I wanted to say way back at the beginning of this conversation when you were commenting, Max, that it's hard because developers have to cater to this crowd and to the casual crowd. And I'm like wondering, do they though? Because what are the numbers? We don't know. We think there's a huge number of people that play this way because that's how content creators play.
Yeah.
And they have their reasons for doing it, but that might be 10% of players. Or it might be 90% of players. We don't know.
The only downside though, I think unfortunately these days, is the whole negative review system. And will that really hurt you being able to even get to the general market of normal people that would have fun with your game if the elite players bash it the first time they see it, and you get a mostly negative on Steam? What's that?
They do that anyway.
Well, but how negative? the 7 out of 10 versus the 4 out of 10, or the mostly negative versus the mixed review, or the generally positive review on Steam.
I do look at reviews on Steam if I'm thinking about buying a game.
And I think anyone would. I think a parent might when they're looking to get a game for their kid.
Yes, but what I don't do is watch a bunch of content creators. So
right. No.
That's just me.
I think the content creators can set the tone though.
Yes, because I do think that there are people who watch content creators, and then they make opinion statements not based on their own experience, but what they got from the content creator.
Yeah.
And maybe that makes its way into Steam reviews and your friend conversations, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, it's not easy, but it's not a good place for gaming to be in. That developers have to, like you said, cater to the negative review and the hardcore.
Yeah.
Small percentage of players. So I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I'll use my gaming money to support games that don't do that strike out on their own.
Maybe the mostly negative. Maybe we're all going to be playing Kong Island, which is widely recognized as the worst game of the year right now.
Did you see Riker's video about that one?
No, I didn't. I've seen a few.
I think it was Riker. He was saying, guys, if Diablo is a 1 out of 10, what do we give this?
Right. If people are saying Diablo is a terrible game, a 1 out of 10. Yeah, I did hear that quote. If Diablo is such a terrible game, a 1 out of 10, and you get that where well, you'll have to look it up, Sema. It's just ridiculously bad. Not only the graphics and the gameplay, but to the point where like there's a cutscene where it's King Kong, and there's like some giant dinosaur that he's about to fight, and he has like a memory flashback of why he hates this dinosaur. And one of like the scenes that is in this like janky cutscene that they put together is like it's like a drawing on a Polaroid that I don't like it was a placeholder. It's just like stuck in there. It just like shows up of like placeholder art as part of the cutscene. And you're like, who built this game? This is terrible. And then the gameplay itself is just bad. I mean, it makes the Gollum game look like a 7 out of 10. But yeah, if you got games like that, and if you go into the deep catalog, the long tail, and I've heard a couple other content creators podcasts that I listen to, if you go into the long tail of Steam and the 10,000 games that come out per year, how can anyone possibly say that Diablo is not, at least in my mind, at least a 7, 8, 9 out of 10? If you look at that long tail, it's like people hold each game to a different standard, and they can do that. I mean, that they're allowed to do that because it's not objective. It's completely subjective. But like Bethesda is getting bashed right now for Starfield, whereas if it was if Larian had put out Starfield, it would be getting 10 out of 10s and everybody would love it, and nobody would be making videos about the post of the day. You know what I think about Starfield? I think that the companions, they're not enough sexy time with the companions, or whatever the item of the day is. People hold Blizzard to a different standard, and some of it falls back on the way they feel about Blizzard as a company, and some of that's justified for the way Blizzard acted. But you can't look at a game and act like you're making an objective review when you're subjectively setting a weird bar and then holding, the game to this weird bar. Or you can, or go ahead and do it. But then we all need, as normal people need to disregard that if we understand it. I still feel like there's an opportunity for platforms like Steam to change their rating and review system, because they're promoting the whatever janky opinion spewing out of someone's mouth as like a legitimate review.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah.
And it's not. So if they want to make it like a, random feedback and take away like the mostly positive, mostly negative, or the summary or the meta review that they are putting together, because that's gamified. If they could like take that out, and Metacritic could change the way they work, and if everybody could take out like this hot take, random, completely subjective, weird takes being part of what like the normal game buying public has to deal with to decide whether a game is valuable or not, or worth it or not. If all of that could be normalized in some way, maybe that's impossible. I think that would be better for everybody.
They could make it, because they could make it that you can't review a game, comment on a game if you haven't played it for 6 hours or 10 hours.
Yeah, and they've started.
And they could also remove the reviews that come from people who buy the game, review it, and then ask for a refund within a day.
Yes,
I mean that's clearly people just trying to.
Which is what's been happening with Diablo, because it just got to Steam and people were doing that. You can't leave a review on a game without having bought it. Overwatch got in trouble because it's free. So you can add it to your library and leave a shitty review, even though you never intend to play it, which is what happened. So Overwatch got review bombed to hell. Diablo still had a lot of those. They do tag those reviews now and say review and buyer refunded if you look at the individual reviews. But if there's 10,000 reviews, you can only look at like the meta score at all, and they should just get rid of the meta scores on those kinds of games.
Yeah, or they could. One of the things they do is sort of all time and recently. I mean, they could play around with it where they say, well, we're gonna show it excluding the people who have refunded, or we'll show you. We'll add one other category, a third category that's only people who've played it at least for this many hours. Things like that, just to help people make a more informed decision, rather than getting scared off. Oh, mixed reviews, maybe not. At least if you give people a little bit more granularity, they can make an informed decision that way.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's almost enough Diablo talk. One one other question I had for Sema actually about Diablo before we transition into what else we've been playing, and then we'll start with Sema too, because it's been a lot of me and some BC and too much me talking so far.
I'm curious
But-
what you're going to ask me about Diablo.
Yes. So my question to you, Sema, is what would make you want to play an ARPG like this? What would pull you into this kind of game?
I can't think of anything because this game, to me, is about gearing up and fighting trash.
Oh, right. Good point.
So
there are bosses that you eventually get to, but like the trash is where it's at.
And when you fight a boss, it isn't really a team effort. It looks like you're kind of joining with everyone who's there in the area, right?
Yeah. And you keep yourself alive.
Yeah.
It's not like you're healing other people or putting your abilities together. Synergize.
Well, and it tends to be, you know, a bunch of people show up and then I kill the boss in 2 seconds with my Wenator Druid. But yeah. it's not really a team effort.
Well,
there was a bit of that in D3, and I'm hoping some of this new content they're going to add maybe in season 3 will introduce a bit more of that group content where you really it does benefit you to have a group. You'll have 0 DPS characters who are providing buffs to the group. I think that'll add an interesting dimension, and maybe it'll make it more interesting for people like Sema.
I do enjoy I do enjoy being like overpowered in a situation. So maybe playing all of Diablo to get to the point where you're overpowered I can't even finish that sentence.
Yeah, well, just stay on world tier 1. Don't go eternal torment.
Right, but then in the end, what you get for playing it is what, gear?
Yeah, and
that's not motivating for me, really. I mean, I do
achievements and collectibles, maybe, but
yeah, but then you can't really share that with anyone.
You could show off your cash shop armor that you bought that has sparkles on it.
Show it off where? How?
No,
the other people,
all the town. I mean, everybody. Like if you do a dungeon with other people, you see everybody's armor, and everybody in town. Like when you go to a town, it's filled with people. So it is a little.
Yeah, I mean, when I played Diablo,
but anyway,
I played Diablo 2 back in the day. I don't remember a dungeon at all, so I don't know what a Diablo dungeon is like.
It's a 5-person. You don't synergize your abilities, but everybody needs to stay together, and everybody.
And it's like there's a random queue for them, or.
No, I wish they'd add that.
You gotta have friends.
Yeah, that's one of the most requested features. Seems to have some kind of group finder. So there's two ways that you could run dungeons depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to level quickly, everyone goes in and runs in a different direction to kill things, and then you can clear the boss at the end. It depends on the objectives, but usually pick ones where you can do that. And then if you're trying to push to clear the higher tiers, then everyone will stay roughly together. In D3, what will happen is there'll be, because there's four people in a group, one person will be in charge of pulling and sort of grouping up the enemies. Often that's a barbarian or something you can pull. Then they'll kind of run off and start pulling enemies together. Then there'll be a person who is responsible for killing all of those that does high AoE damage. There'll be a third person who's buffing them defensively and offensively, and then there'll be a fourth person who's responsible for killing the boss at the end. And so they have better single target damage. So it's a little bit more like MMOs and raid groups where you start to have a little bit of strategy and everyone playing a role. So I'm hoping with season 3 they might start to bring back content where that's a little bit more of an option, and a group finder would be helpful as well. It feels like Diablo 4 has a lot of potential to add some of those fun community MMO elements with some of the content, and they just sort of don't have all of the tools or the content there yet for it, while still being an ARPG the same way that they always have been. That feels like maybe one area where they can innovate a little, and it'll still be an ARPG, but but add a little bit more of that kind of group content in. I think that'll be fun, and it'll certainly keep people playing more because they can group up with friends. Or
Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe we'll find
And
one
I
for you,
mean,
Sema.
also like the tagline for Diablo 4 is sort of like "Come back to hell" or something like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. And I wasn't saying this one in particular because also, and that's something that I run into quite a bit, is if it's an ugly, nasty place, there's only so much time that I want to live there.
I mean, it
There's
is
that too.
very beautiful looking.
It is well done. The game is well constructed. The abilities feel good. I think the art is done really well. Yes, it's hell and it's it's nasty and there's skeletons and blood and all of that, but it's very artistic and you can like zoom in. Like when I was zooming in on my armor, yeah, it's they did a great job on this game. And for people to just like say it's terrible is inappropriate. It's inappropriate. Like there, my guy, he's pretty cool. My new Necro. Anyways, I think we've probably been playing some other stuff too I want to touch on before we're done here today. So,
It looks like meat's back on our menu, boys.
No way, God. Finally.
I kind of like the magnet bread.
So what else have you been playing, Sema? Lay it
Well,
on us.
we talked a little bit about WoW, but I've never mentioned before that they've added. Or I think I have mentioned that they've added like levels of heroicness to the dungeons, and they're kind of similar to like Mythic Plus in retail, but they are not called that, and they're not that similar. But they do add a specific set of affixes across the game. So like I said affixes in the plural meaning across all the dungeons, but a particular dungeon only has one affix. And they're kind of interesting because like there's one affix where, and it's always going to be the same dungeons that have these affixes. But
Okay.
there's one dungeon where the tank can go pick up a poison and poison himself. And then wherever he fights, if he makes the mob stand in where his poison blood is spilling out,
Interesting.
it hurts the mobs.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is a really cool affix because basically it's up to the healer and the tank
To
make-
balance it and figure it out.
to make sure that the dungeon is a success, and then the DPS have to kill. All they have to do is kill, which is what they like to do anyway. And also, I mean, and I respect them for that too, but because I don't want to do that job. But yeah, that I like that, and it's once it was explained to me, it's easy to conceptualize, and then there's another one called mirror images where any mob, even like the least mob, there's some exceptions, but any mob at any time can cast a mirror image of itself, and you can kill them right away. They have very few HP, very few health points, but they can do any of the special attacks that their progenitor can. So if you're in a fight where the main mechanic is that mobs can fear or stun you or whatever, and if they throw off 3 mirror images and they're fearing and stunning and all this other stuff, it's kind of interesting too because you have to come up with a plan for DPS to immediately kill these mirror images.
Right.
Or else you can't be successful. Yeah. Yeah. Like it has to be deep. Oh, go ahead.
No, so it sounds like it would be really specific to who you bring to the fight then too?
Well, no, because every class has something they can do.
Right. Right.
Like even as a healer, I can wand them or I can put a dot on them or whatever. It's better if a DPS does it though because they can use their instant attack, which I don't have any of, to kill them right away.
Yeah.
So they die easily. It's just that you have to be on top of it. Yeah.
I meant the abilities that they're throwing at you are going to vary based on who's there that day.
They're not mirror images of the players. They're mirror images of the mobs.
Oh, okay.
That's what I meant. So like if a mob if you're
Mob
fighting
mirror
a mob,
images.
yeah,
I was thinking it
who's
was like Argent. Isn't it like Argent Tournament? Well, Argent Tournament still's not mirror
yes,
image of
there
you,
yes,
but
there are other fights where it's mirror images of you and you have to kill your mirror image. That's
Yeah.
true. That's a
Yeah.
different thing.
that's a fun thing
But
too.
but on top of all this, as we go forward in time in Classic, what they've been doing is every time they introduce a new level of dungeon, like we're up to Gamma level dungeons now. They're called Titan Rune Gamma. The raid tier from before becomes available on these dungeons.
Oh, the gear drops.
Yes, so these Gamma
Oh,
dungeons
nice.
are a huge opportunity for gearing up
Catch
for
up.
the next dungeon or for catch up on an alt, right? So like in between raid tiers, it makes it very easy being, anyway, makes it very easy for people to say, you know what, I want to be a druid this time. And the raid leader doesn't have to like say no.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's nice.
You just have
Yeah,
to
that sounds great.
run, 50 dungeons.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
just
That's why
run
I
50
kind of
dungeons
laughed
over
when I
and over
said
with
easy,
Andrew.
because that's like those people we were talking about that will run the same half of a dungeon 100 times. They would call this very easy, right? Because you can
Right.
easily come by without raiding. You can come by the currency you need to buy tier in some situations, tier pieces, or you can buy the sexy trinkets that you never got the first time around when you were doing the raid content. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Definitely
it's
easier than getting a bunch of DKP and having to go
and
to
then
the
on
raid fight.
top of that, since they've added random dungeon finder now, you can easily run these dungeons, right? And now that they've been the latest Gamma releases have been out for a while, they're kind of well understood, and you can expect a pug to be successful. I mean, there might be some wipes, but you can expect some level of success in a pug. So yeah, you can gear up whenever you want. You can do it during coffee and contemplation if you wanted.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
And then in Star Wars, well,
Here, I got a
there's
little bit of our
yeah.
ops night right here. We've been streaming our ops night, so I grabbed a clip of it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I got the Kevin fight even
were
back
we
there
going
at
to
the end.
talk about the stuff from 7.4
Uh
that we know about? I mean, or are we going to save that for another night?
oh, did
We talked a little bit about it last week, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about it some last week.
Yeah. We don't need to touch on that.
Yeah, no, we talked about it last week, and we're gonna do when it comes to the PTS and we can get our hands on it. We're gonna do a bigger segment on it then.
I like
but
this
yeah.
fight that you're showing right now. We call it Kevin.
Yes.
This is a fun fight. To me, it's a fun fight.
Oh, really? I thought you hated this fight.
No, I don't hate this fight. I don't like Lady Dom.
Lady Dom
But
is crazy. Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Because the
but that's
mechanics are just not well understood.
yes, I don't like it when I don't understand.
No, I
That's
agree.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
mechanics are very opaque in its many phases, which makes it really tough. Oh, that's
But
gonna
this
make
one is just an and not education, execution thing. And
right.
sometimes things pile up in a way that, we didn't have the luck to finish the fight.
Right.
But
Yeah, because
the
there's
better
some
you
randomness to where the
yeah,
floor
the
gets lit
better
up.
you execute it, the more you can handle
Yeah.
the exceptions. Yeah, I like this fight, and I used to love like the Underlurker fight, same thing. You just have to know the dance and then execute it. And I never disliked Corruptor Zero either. That was one of my favorite fights.
Yeah. I don't mind tough fights that you have to learn to. The Lady Dom fight is difficult, and if it wasn't the last fight in the whole place, and we were spending more time on it each week, I think we would all like learn it faster. But because it's the last fight and we don't even do it every week,
Yeah.
we're only doing it like once a month at this point. We're even bothered to get to it because we're doing other
Right.
content.
And we do it in the last 20 minutes of the night.
Yeah, and we're all like
Because
tired by that point and
in this game
goofing
where
off.
there are no lockouts. And actually in Wrath Classic there's no lockouts either.
Yeah. So and because it's such a complicated many phase fight, we're not even like nobody's bothering to even like watch a video, and we all should be doing that. And if we really cared,
Right.
like it was like
Right.
we were really trying to progress really
I
hard,
mean,
which we're not.
I think yes, you're right. The mechanics are obscure in that fight, but I think they are known.
Right. It's
It's
not a
just
mystery.
not by us.
It's just not by us. That's what I'm saying. We could go look it up, and if we actually wanted to get done, but it's we just need to get in there and do it. But I think we've got our act together and our team together where we'll be able to do that before long now.
I know. While I'm talking about it,
look at the gear upgrade.
Yeah.
It's gonna make it
While I'm
slightly
talking
easier.
about it, it's making me realize I really should watch a video, read a guide. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some good ones out there because
Corley's probably pulling his hair out because I think he's given us videos and.
yeah, yes, he has. He also knows us though.
Yes. Yeah, Corley. Did you expect us to read? I was elected to lead, not to read.
And in this case, you weren't even elected to lead.
Not even elected to lead in this case. Anything else?
No. I think that's
All
pretty
right,
much it.
that's pretty fun. How about you, BC? I know you've been doing a few other things besides Diablo. What do you got on your menu?
Yeah, with 2 kids under 2, I've sort of hit pause on an MMOs. My schedule's not predictable, so I've been playing a lot of ARPGs, so Diablo D4, a bit of D3, PoE, Grim Dawn. Excited for Last Epoch. Probably gonna spend a bunch of time on that, especially with the launch coming. I also started to go into my back catalog a little bit more. Things that I'd been meaning to play, so turned out to be a fun sort of alternative. I dug up some solo RPGs that I hadn't had a chance to play yet. Went through
really?
Jedi Fallen Order, which I loved. Up next, I'll dive into Jedi Survivor, the recent one that came out not long ago. I also meant to play some CRPGs like the Pathfinder games. Hadn't had a chance to. Went through those. Had a blast. Excited to dive into Baldur's Gate 3 sometime soon. So I've been enjoying going through the back catalog a little bit, playing some games that I can just play it in my own time. If it's at midnight, then and I have a little bit of time to chill out. I can dive in for a little bit and enjoy. So I've been having a blast going through the back catalog a little bit as well. It's been a great year for RPGs. So I'm excited to not only to catch up on the back catalog, but to have a new back catalog that's coming up this year.
I can't wait and I've really transformed over the course of really just the last 3 or 4 years of really started to get into single player RPGs. I used to be MMOs only for a decade or decades. I just didn't feel like progression mattered in an RPG where I would bother to play it all the way through. And there's still RPGs that I'm not playing all the way through that I could, but I'm looking forward to more that I would get to them because it was like an event and everybody would be talking about it, and I would end up going and doing it. Like Skyrim, I got to Skyrim eventually because it was a thing, but now I'm like, I want Horizon Forbidden West to come to PC, and it's only on PlayStation. I want to play for Horizon Forbidden West. I'm not playing Star Wars. I'm not going to buy a PlayStation and start Spider-Man. I mean, I'm not playing Spider-Man, but I probably would if I had access to it. I probably would, although that's not what I'm dying to play through. I haven't played Jedi Survivor, but I did play 2/3 of Fallen Order, but liked it, had fun. Really like still playing Starfield, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree. The RPGs, there's, as you said, especially with the little kids and having limited time, being able to like pause a game, there's value. There's value there.
And it's nice to have a little bit of variety, in some of those solo RPGs, it's a little bit more about exploration. I really enjoyed in the Jedi Fallen Order game, trying to unlock all of the different codexes, finding all those locations, working my way through the story. On CRPGs, it's a little bit more tactical. The combat's slow-paced, very different to ARPGs. So it's fun as well just to have a little bit of variety in your gaming too. I hadn't had that in a while. I've been enjoying that.
Right. I completely agree. Are you so you said you're mostly on break from ESO, but still like dabbling there in terms of MMOs? Would you say ESO is still your main MMO these
I
days?
have not logged into Star Wars in months. My subscription has lapsed, and I haven't logged into ESO
Sad.
in some time either. Yeah, I just don't have the time,
Yeah.
and so I tend to be all in or not at all.
Yeah.
So
And
so
switching off is something we
right.
all do.
And the great thing about it as well is in both of those cases, you can actually go back in and dabble a little bit because there's free, some of it's free to play, or in ESO's case, once you've bought it, you can play the stuff that you've bought.
Yeah.
So I could see myself dabbling, if there's a fun event. Actually, the recent Total Galactic War, I logged back in and my account was just in preferred status, but I got my conquest points, made sure I got the title. So that was
Cool.
actually the last time I logged in for Total Galactic War. So for stuff like that, I think I log back in. I like helping out the guild. It's fun to get a title, do an event from time to time. But I think that's probably what I'll do for MMOs for a while, and I'll stick more with stuff where I can dip in and out with the kids. And then at some point, the kids will get old enough. We'll probably get a console, and I'll try to get them to game with me.
Yes.
That'll be fun too.
When do you
super
think
fun.
that'll be, and what console?
I don't know. The console's probably going to be determined by what all of their friends have, because that's usually the way it goes, right? Kids all want to sort of have the same one as their friend group. So I don't know what it'll be, but my goal is to have all four of us, including my wife, who's not a big gamer, but she will play stuff like Mario Party, those kind of games where we can all play together. So I'm excited for the kids to be a little older and for us to all play Mario Party or whatever similar thing is around.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun too.
Yeah, that'll be really fun. That's a fun thing. Let's see. As speaking of bouncing around to various MMOs, I'm showing here a little bit. I have been still doing some New World. And here's maybe a question for all of you as well. When I was thinking about New World, and I was hearing people, there was actually a question on Reddit, I think, which was which games have the best holiday events. And right now for Halloween, they've all got a Halloween event, and New Worlds is pretty good. It's not super deep, but there's like a world boss you go fight. There's like the trick or treating, and then there's a whole bunch of currency that you're getting, and then a bunch of cosmetics and house decorations and fun stuff. So I've been doing a bunch of that stuff in New World. If you had to pick another game, I mean, WoW's always done a good job, but yeah, what would you say, Sema, would be your favorite game for holiday events?
Oh, that's a hard one. I guess for me, it's still WoW because
Yeah.
they are. I loved, and I know this is not common, but I loved the sort of super long holiday event achievement where you had to do every event.
Long strange trip.
You had to do the meta and every event for the end. You get a really valuable reward, which was like a mount
Yeah.
that's faster than any other mount in the game.
Yeah, I like that too. And it's the most complete set of events in WoW.
Right.
Just 'cause
And
it's
there's
forever.
usually a thing you can do in every event that's like a lot of XP for a leveling alt, and there's usually something you can do in every event that is a boss fight that you can just jump in with your friends and maybe get a couple of pieces of gear. Yeah, it's kind of a 360-degree all around good thing.
How about you, BC? What would you say your favorite game for in-game holiday events?
I really like some of ESOs. There's some are better than others, but their Halloween event is fun because it gives you something to do regardless of what you enjoy in the game. And I always like events where it gives you a range of different options.
Yeah.
So for example, there's a bunch of crafting stuff. You can learn all these recipes, make all these things, get titles, get some collectibles, from crafting. So there's stuff there for people who craft. There's a bunch of housing stuff. It's always big around Halloween. They release a new house, they release new decorations. I ran a guild event where I hid pumpkins around one of my houses in ESO.
Oh, I remember that.
And got people to guess how many pumpkins there were in my house. So there, and then there's also the events where you have to do a bunch of activities around the world. You collect this currency. Once you have enough, you can summon a boss, and it's this it's a cool boss fight, and you need a group to do it. And that's for if you enjoy sort of fighting world bosses, there's that for you. If you just enjoy a little bit of side questing, there's side quests. So I've always liked some of the ESO holiday events. There's a similar, they have New Life at the end of the year, which is sort of a Christmas, New Year, holiday theme. And there's a bunch of different activities to do there. So the ESO ones are always pretty engaging. Always enjoyed those. And I'm sure there's many games that do that kind of thing. But I always enjoy the one where there's a little bit of everything, depending on what you might enjoy in the game, or one day you feel like doing one thing, and the next day you can do something different. So I definitely like that. It felt like ESO was sort of trying to make sure they hit each of the gamer stereotypes, that Dr. Gameology and others will talk about.
Yeah. Another one that fits in that category really well, that comes up in this kind of conversation quite a bit, and I agree with, is Guild Wars 2. They have really diverse set of activities around each of their holiday events. So I think it's like Festival of the Mad King is their Halloweenish event going on right now. Keep forgetting about that. I should jump in there and check that one out too. So yeah, but I like this little one in New World. I've been doing, we're doing in the middle of Feast of Prosperity right now, which is a fun event in SWTOR. I think SWTOR just needs more events. I've liked the SWTOR events, but they're few and far between. We'll get winter Life Day.
Life Day.
Okay.
I mean, we have Feast of Prosperity going on right now.
Yeah. So Feast of Prosperity now, it's got the world boss kills and some
I
cool
really
new
like
decorations.
Yeah, I really like that they brought the
mounts.
world boss kills into Feast of Prosperity.
Yeah, that was a good move. And Life Day we always like, even though the events are a little bit smaller, we always like Life Day and throwing the snowballs on Nar Shaddaa, which is a blast as a group. We'll do like a whole night of the whole guild just standing around on Nar Shaddaa throwing snowballs at robots. You get little rewards for doing it. That's why we're doing it. But yeah, so bunch of Diablo, as I said. I got to level 50 and Cathedral of Light, moved up to World Tier 3. I don't know. I'm probably not going to 100% the season, but had a ton of fun. Still probably have a little bit more fun. New World still going well for me. Star Wars, of course, ton of Star Wars. But I think this weekend coming up, I think I'm gonna be in VR. So I'm gonna spend some time in VR this weekend. Dungeons of Eternity, something Asgard, something I think I got for free as part of the Quest 3 pre-order. My number one favorite VR game still is No Man's Sky. So I'm going to be spending some time with the Quest 3 to really give it a workout and be able to talk about it next week or the week after. All right. Anything else before we wrap up here? Okay. Well, hey.
Thanks for having me.
BC. Yes, this was amazing.
It was fantastic that you were here. Thanks for coming.
I wanted to talk about Diablo. You are a perfect person to bring in because I know you've been forever really on point with understanding where Diablo is at, both pre-D4 and through D4. So thanks so much. Any place besides the AIE Discord where people should come find you if they've got more questions about Diablo in particular?
That's the best spot. There's a bunch of us who are playing. I know there's several who are interested in doing dungeon runs. So yeah, join the AIE Discord. Post in the Diablo channel. There's people playing there at all times.
Cool. All right. And for us, all the feed and subscribe links are on newoverlords.com, as we always say. And our video is YouTube/newoverlords. Please come chat with us in our Discord in particular at newoverlords.com/Discord. You can get right in. You can also follow on Twitter and Mastodon and Blue Sky and Threads. And I do a little bit on each of those every day. And I try to follow more people and trying to make social network a thing. It's kind of not a thing as much as it ever was in the past, but I put stuff out there quite a bit. So if you want to see game news and chat about game stuff, or let me know something that I should take a look at, that would be cool in any of those places. That's fun. You can always find me usually at Max the Gray, sometimes at New Overlords on any of those social networks. And we will keep you up to date on when the shows goes live and what's coming next. And with that, we will talk to you soon.
Later, everyone.